to order. 5:30. And we're going to move into the executive session for the purpose of discussing legal matters. Into executive session.
Let's start him. Sharon, we're all set if you want to introduce John for the budget work session, or I can introduce him, whichever you would like.
Moving into our budget work session, and on, and everyone is ready.
Can you hear me okay? Good. Okay.
And Matt, if you could start the presentation so John could click through it, that would be great.
So here we are, our first budget presentation, budget workshop of the season. A lot of ground to cover, a lot of things going on with state aid, of course, that you may have heard some about, and we'll try to talk a little about that as much as we can and give you an idea what's going on with the state aid situation. So we'll go through our normal slides about the Iroquois Vision, the Iroquois Mission. Nothing's really changed with these things. The consideration of our budget, obviously unwaveringly committed to serving the interests of our students, exercising care and judgment and managing resources, committed to conducting our business in an open manner, objective and professional manner, and future focused, of course, looking long-term with what we do and making sure we keep ourselves out of trouble long term. The agenda tonight is talk a little bit more about our budget philosophy. We have a FEMA claim open. I'll talk about that. Look at our voting results that we've had. Go through revenues, go through expenses. Of course, we're planning to protect instructional programs against state aid and tax levy fluctuations. That's how we've always been doing things here. New concerns and some things that are different now with their state aid reductions, possibly due to COVID-19. There's the impact of federal funding being introduced more and more in our finances, and we got to account for that and know what the future of that is. Consumer price index impacts our tax levy and how much money we can raise there. New state mandates are always coming out that we have to be aware of and plan for and address, and sometimes that takes money as well. And then state aid distribution philosophy and how the big pie is spread out throughout New York State. We always watch that as well. FEMA, I did process 2 claims. The one covers from March, when COVID really started in this area, March 1st to June 1st. That was the last fiscal year, so we had that as one pocket that we had all our expenses accumulated. And then the second one goes up until September 14th, which FEMA decided that's really their end point for claims. Any expenses incurred after September 14th would not be considered. So basically I had to go through all of our expenses, make copies of all the bills that we paid, scan all those, submit them to the government, and they are going to review those 2 claims that we have, and there's no necessarily promises that we're going to get full reimbursement or what kind of reimbursement we'll get. But these are claims that include COVID-19 expenses, personal protective equipment, the dust shields, everything that we had to do and purchase just because of COVID-19 being introduced. And reimbursement is dependent on funding of FEMA, and recently there's news that FEMA may be getting more money from the federal government, so maybe our chances are better from that. I don't know.
And I really think that, with the size of COVID across the nation, you think of the hundreds of schools that are out there, this is really going to be something that's going to be challenging to fund by the federal government, and we can understand, currently the amount of time it's going to take to determine how that will be done.
Certainly. Look at our vote results from last year, and what you see from this in the yellow section is that our voter turnout, because it was mail-in ballots, we saw more than double the turnout for our vote, which was great. So when we look at the three propositions, we're kind of in line or a little less approval than the previous year. But when you look at our history over the last 8 years or so, the results are pretty much in line with what we've seen in the past. So that was good news. There is no word on if the May vote will be done in person or through ballots. That's not determined yet. I'm sorry, mail-in ballots. They haven't determined if they're going to use mail-in ballots yet. Revenues for 21-22. Just to look at the tax rates, you'll see that for this year we're in right now, we had a 2.0% increase in the tax levy. When you take and consider all the changes in the assessed values, property values definitely went up. Equalization rates went down, which means property values went up. Our equalized tax rate came down quite a bit, but again, that's just reflective of the property values in our area going up. It's not necessarily lowering the tax bill for anyone. Tax cap, we've talked about for many years now, so I think everyone's pretty well versed on how this works. It's based upon CPI increase. That's one calculation. This year, the coming year, it's 1.23%, which is the allowable growth factor. It can maximum of growth factor is 2%, so we're at 1.23 this coming year. We consider pilot payments in that. We consider the tax-based growth factor, which is we're allowed a certain amount of growth on our levy based on the property values and housing being added in our district. So that's 1.0065, a slight increase there. And then there's exclusions, capital expenditure exclusion and retirement system exclusion for variation over 2 percentage points, which doesn't apply this year because it's not going up by that much. These factors all result in a tax levy that can be below or above 2%. And here we just were able to finalize our tax limit calculation just a couple days ago when we got some more information from BOCES. So you look at the current years on the top half, the projected next year, 21-22, is below that. And we are at, the calculation says that we can impose a 1.96% increase on our levy, and that would only require a majority vote. If we chose to go above that 1.96, we would require a supermajority of 60% approval. But right now we're building everything based on being in compliance with the tax cap calculation, 1.96%.
And I think, you really do a good job, John, with this and explaining it, because it is complicated with all the different things that go out there. Years ago when it first initially came out with that 2%. I think one year maybe we will hit the 2%, but this year we are not. Close.
I think the only year we really were well below was a very low CPI year, and I think we were in 0.8 or something like that on our levy, but that was one exception to everything.
Yep, that's quite a few years ago.
So the big question is state aid, and it's constantly evolving. So what I want to do, though, is look back at this current year we're in. Back in March of 2020, the governor released the state budget on March 31st. In those state aid runs for this year we're in right now, they included two new things. It was a negative pandemic adjustment, which is a decrease to our state aid, and they increased, and then added a federal CARES restoration number of 207, which would balance that out. And essentially he was saying we weren't going to be hurt by this. No change, effectively, on the state aid. But when we got into how this works and the year started to unfold, there were two pots of money that this was put into the federal aid. One was called ESSER and one was called GEER, Government Education Emergency Relief. We were allocated $208,000, a little higher actually than what he said in March, and that's based on the allocation that's used for title funds, basically. So that was kind of like, okay, we got what we thought we were going to get. We applied online through a system that's very similar to title funds, so it's a very involved online application process. And then they threw all those applications out and said, oh, we forgot about private schools. Just like title funds, for low-income families that attend private schools outside of the district, that money that's allocated to those students goes with them. So we had to go back and consult with those schools, see if they had eligible students. There's about 30 schools that we had to contact and find out if they had eligible students. In the end, of that money we were allocated, $4,233 winds up going to the private schools. So we net about 204. I know it's not a big difference, but it just shows that what the plan is in March and what actually happens in reality are sometimes two different things. And what was involved with that application process is that we had to consult with those private schools. Like I said, we have to have meaningful consultation. We have to discuss what the students need from those private schools, complete FS10 budget statements, and we can't even give those schools just a check for the money because they want us to not just hand out money. We have to buy the items they need and then send those to the private schools. So creates a big, a lot of time spent to make this happen. Drawing down the funds requires FS25 forms, so as you spend the money, you have to put in forms to ask for the money to be paid to us. And we'll finally close this out probably in July or August. When the year's closed, we'll have to submit a final cost report. So the money will be will show up quite a bit after the year is completed.
Yeah, and while you're there, John, I just want to thank you and the business office for all this extra work. And, during this time of COVID, when there was a lot of other things we're looking at, too, for the safety of the schools, of completing all this. That was a little bit to throw. Does anyone have any questions right now with any of this? Okay. Beautiful.
So that leads me into what the governor proposed for 21-22. He presented his initial budget, on the 19th of January, and it's always considered a start point. It's not really, it's never a final point for the state aid, but it's a start point. And he included in his proposal $6 billion in federal stimulus funds. He considers this and said it's his worst case scenario because he's really seeking about $15 billion in federal assistance. And that's for not just for education, that's for the state as a whole, what he's looking for to help with all the COVID-related expenses statewide. And we're not sure how that is progressing with the stimulus package from Washington. Included in his proposal this year, again, why I brought up that small adjustment he made the previous year is that this year that adjustment's a much bigger number. For us, it's $1.9 million is being subtracted from our aid runs, and he's replacing it with $1.9 million in COVID-19 supplemental stimulus. So again, that's our concern is like how much of that will we actually, when it boils down to what we get in our district, how much of that $1.9 million will we get? And also on his state aid runs, which is new for this year, and we don't know why, he included STAR. STAR is not state aid. It never has been. But he included these numbers. He put the current year STAR amount of money, and he put the estimated STAR for next year.
Yeah, and one of the reasons that people are surmising that it might be out there is because the way the federal government wrote for the stimulus funds that were going out to the schools is they went directly, they were going to go to the schools. And the state is having financial concerns, which any way you cut it, we could be losing money. And this was a way of keeping schools relatively flat by using the federal money to take care of where the state was running in a shortfall, even though the federal government was allocating it towards schools. It's a way of just moving the money around within the state. There are some people who don't think that's right. I guess, in a big summary picture, if the state is running short of money, schools are a big portion of the expenditures for a state. We're going to be hit, and this by going against the STAR with the 1.9, it was a way of putting the money back to the state to use for other sources.
Yeah, basically, then the state is keeping that money for themselves.
That's my understanding from different representatives I've talked to.
And how STAR is always, we've never considered STAR really, it's obviously, it's not a state aid item. It pertains to the tax levy, and we put out our tax levy, and everyone who applies for the STAR gets their STAR credit, and New York State makes up that difference of what they get in credit. So we get our tax levy as a whole every year, and the STAR number, even though it shows it's going down here, it's not something that really impacts us necessarily each year. So when he talked about state aid, again, foundation aid is the same number. It's been for probably 7-8 years now. It has not changed. So he still has that same foundation aid number for our district and all the districts in New York State. And then he combined a lot of categories: transportation, BOCES, textbook technology into one category. He balled them together and called them services aid. So that we would, nobody wants to see those things put together. Those are unique, certain specific things, each one of them. So there are ways to kind of break those out, and we're digging into those a little further to make sure that we're getting what we're supposed to. But those are also very much estimated every year because they're based on the expenses we incur this year. So obviously we're only halfway through this year, a little more than halfway. They're taking guesses at what we're going to use this year and what our state aid is going to be reflective of that, because services aid are basically a percentage of the money we spend this year.
And am I right that, with expenditures from last year for aid this year because of COVID and being out of school in March, that we had significant changes in how much we're going to expect for revenues because of that?
Correct. That's when we look at the budget numbers, then we're going to see our state aid numbers from budget to budget, it's going to look lower than what the governor said, because the governor's looking at the actual number for this year, which is lower than what we budgeted for revenues from the state this year, because we didn't spend as much in the prior year due to COVID, especially on transportation, and some of the BOCES expenses were not fully realized. Again, expense-based aids are always an estimate till the year ends. So our state aid right now is lower than our budget due to the expenses in 1920, like I just stated. So when we look at our table of revenues for expected revenues for 21-22, you can see our state aid is a significant drop-off, because that 13.8 number in 2021 is a bigger number based on what we expected to get back based on the expenses in 1920 that didn't materialize as much as we thought they were. So we're always starting a little lower, and the governor's number is about 13.2 or something like that on the start point.
Right, so when you say that 13.2, you're talking about that 2021 number where we have 13.8?
13.8, yes.
Because we're reflecting to what was budgeted last year, where the governor on his run actually is using what they expect to pay us.
Actual expected payments for this year, yes.
Right, because I think the Buffalo News ran an article, and we looked like one of the only schools going down. And with that, it was like, I want to say 1.2%. But really that had other aspects into it besides this. But really, since the formula is flat, it's those expense-driven aids is what's causing this gap. And with those expense-driven aids, it's because we did not have those expenditures, which also saved local tax dollars.
Yes, it did. And part of the work we have to do now in the coming months is really go through those expense-based transportation expenses, BOCES expenses, and verify what we're doing this year. In 1920, we also didn't make our big technology one-to-one device purchase because of COVID. We couldn't get those computers in by June 30th, so we missed that large purchase through BOCES that would have been aided this year. So we did get the computers in the summer, so that's this year, and we expect to make another purchase of replacement. So our BOCES really will probably be higher than what the governor is estimating for next year, and we have to consider all those things and special education costs and all those things that we get through BOCES. And that's the work we have to do in the coming months. Again, the other revenue areas, Medicaid flat, sales tax flat. I have more to say about that in a couple slides. Use of reserves, you'll see the numbers a little lower, 91,400 lower, because that was the technology reserve that we used last year that ended. So we don't have technology reserve to use in this coming year's budget.
And that use of the reserve was a long planned out decrease of it over multiple years.
Yep. Through voter authorization, yes.
Excellent.
And then you see the tax levy I've built in there right now at 1.96% increase. So you can see the revenue from this year to next year is right now showing relatively flat. I wanted to bring up sales tax because we were concerned last year when COVID happened, and the last, we call it the fourth quarter of last school year, which is April, May, and June. We were very concerned about what our sales tax collections were going to be and how much the district might lose with that. Turned out it wasn't as bad as we thought. Those 3 months, they actually sent us a memo saying they expected us to lose 35% of that revenue in sales tax. We actually saw about 12% decrease over those 3 months, so it wasn't nearly as bad as we thought. And the first part of that year before COVID really hit was going ahead of schedule. So we finished last year ahead of what we thought in sales tax, which was great. This year we budgeted. Yes, I'm going to get that in one more slide, I think, 1 or 2 slides. I'll have something on that, yes. So this year's budget right now, we're in now, $2.6 million is the budget for the sales tax, and what we've seen from the first 2 quarters, we're on track to meet that budget. But, as Mr. Lowry says, there's a wrinkle in that. Last week, we were given a memo by Stefan Mihailu, the Erie County Controller, who was giving us news from the New York State Controller's office, Tom DiNapoli, and he put out a note saying that, Part ZZ of Chapter 56, laws of 2020, that the state controller can withhold sales tax collections in the aggregate amount of $50 million from counties outside of New York City. And these funds will be placed into a New York agency trust fund called Distress Provider Assistance Account, which is really a hospital aid is what they're using it for. Because of COVID, they want to collect money for hospital aid. And they'll pull this from the counties of Erie County. And the impact to us is found at the bottom, $20,000 in the year we're in right now, and about $12,000 because it's not a full year next year, so about $12,000 less sales tax because of this pullback that they're going to do for hospital aid. Is that what you're referring to, Dave? Okay. Okay. So that's, again, it's not big money, but it's just a little more being taken from us that we should be getting. It adds up over time. We want to talk a little about technology insurance. Just to give you a little history, and I have another slide to talk about the fees that we do. When we started doing one-to-one devices, we realized that there were going to be some issues with damage and students taking these things home and how to deal with those things. At this point now, we're at one-to-one devices really district-wide. We paused the insurance on this technology insurance because it used to be a thing that was optional for families. If you want to take your computer home and you were in grades 5 to 12 and you want to take your computer home, that was your choice. And if you wanted to do that, you had to buy technology insurance. And I have the fees here. It was about $30 per student to take home a computer, and then $30 deductible for damage that could occur. And at the time, those were optional expenses for families. When we went to home in March, when everything changed, and we had to do mandatory home instruction, and it wasn't an option to take your computer home, it was mandatory. So at that point, we decided we didn't want to put more stress on families who wouldn't normally be able to pay this or want to pay this fee. So we waived that fee for the 2021 school year. Again, here's some idea, some information on how it worked. It was there was no charge. It was warranty repair. If we saw that there's abuse, we'd always pass that off to the principals to kind of deal with and follow up with the students and the family. We would issue technology bills back to the parents. Unpaid bills would then be again handled by the principals to kind of do collections work, I guess you'd say. But this year, without having to kind of deal with all these financial issues, obviously we've had a lot better turnaround time. We've been able to fix computers and get them back into students' hands immediately. We're not waiting to collect money from people and trying to deal with all that. And we're seeing that just the technicians obviously have a lot more time to do repairs instead of worrying about billing records and things like that. So it's worked out very well this year, and we've even implemented the technology drive-up window for students that are homeschooled, and that's worked out great as well. And we can get those kids, get their computer from them and have them back in their hands very quickly now. And look at the numbers if you have a question about what the finances were for the technology insurance, that $30 per student plus deductibles, we collected around a little over $40,000 in revenue through those fees. And we incurred about roughly $40-some thousand in expenses in a typical year. And those are just the supplies, replacement parts and pieces that we stock. And occasionally we have a contract, we have to send a computer out to be repaired. But that's not including technicians' time, obviously. But you can see in 2021 we did not make that collection. So the question we have is, Do we want to continue with that and waive those technology fees for the coming school year 21-22?
And just, I guess, to give my perspective on this is someone once a long time ago talked about hidden taxes, ones that you have to pay and they're generating a lot of money. And this was really when we did the insurance years ago, it was because it was for an added benefit to people who wanted it, individuals who didn't want to take home their computer, they didn't need it. But right now with COVID and not knowing where we're going to be in September and having the budget vote in May and having you guys be the fiscal overseers of the district and really, this is really in the wheelhouse of the board, I would recommend not doing it because if in September we're telling everyone you need to be taking your computers home, but then you have to pay a fee on top of it, the insurance fee, I think that'd be a really challenging thing to do. And I know the board feels that as a majority felt that way last year too, because that's how we ended up with zero. So then John built his budget this way, but definitely there's time between now and then to discuss it, talk about it, unless someone wants to speak up now about it.
Yes, I agree with you that we should not charge, because if it's kind of mandatory that you're going to need your computer at home, I think I agree with you.
Yeah, I had a question about this when we even first implemented the insurance policy. I didn't think it was fair. I mean, I guess you could argue that taking a computer home is optional, but for some kids it's not, even pre-COVID. And so I'm absolutely in favor of eliminating this. It was just more paperwork and unnecessary.
I think it's a big change to recognizing too that no matter what we find ourselves in with instruction go the same. And technology has become that more pivotal piece. I can't imagine that we're saying now that it's optional, whereas that may have seemed reasonable at that time or not, but it may come. Then I just think now is a necessity. It seems very difficult to charge that.
I think that's a good statement too, because with the COVID, that's one thing that has come, the evolution of technology and how it's used. And we're hoping this could be really a good springboard for how instruction is delivered with using computers.
I'm also, some of the things that I've heard is that our students are really respectful of the technology and they're really respectful of the fact that the equipment is, unknown to them and that they are being really careful with it, that, they've been taught the proper ways to handle their computers and they know that, things happen and they're not going to get hollered at if something, breaks, in an innocent manner. And I think that, it's nice that we're able to show our students that we respect them and that we recognize their maturity level to be able to handle that.
And it's really amazing to see even younger students carrying their computers home each night and doing a great job with it. And to your point, Jay, we're seeing that the students are not hesitant to let us know that they have a problem. Where they might have been beforehand, they seek out the assistant. That's good news. We can get the problem rectified earlier.
And I think even if you look at the amount expended, whether there was insurance or not, it's about identical. So the use, it's not making kids be more careful. I think it's normal wear and tear on the machines with this greater volume that we're using.
Okay, based on the feedback, I'll continue the budget with that revenue taken out. So thank you for that. Expense side, what I'm presenting tonight includes these caveats. We're looking at funding our supply codes the way we are this year. Next year, we're just carrying those numbers over. Staffing levels, we're starting at a point where we're just taking the 2021 levels and moving them into next year. We are discussing, though, we have some retirements where we are going to have discussions about how to handle those retirements and which ones are replaced and how they're replaced. We look at an estimated health insurance increase of 6.5%. We have not built all the retirements into the budget right now because we don't know the impact of all those just yet. We have further discussions to make with that. And then we are building in scheduled replacement of 2 grades of one-to-one devices in the coming year's budget.
And I guess this is a point where I always project some frustration with the funding coming from the state, because when you're having health insurance increases of 6.5, and I'll say the foundation is intentionally held flat, I don't see how they're carrying their part of it to equitably fund education. I would hope at least they would do CPI, because if they could fund what the cost of, consumer price index is, the cost of living, that would be a significant help on that portion.
Of course, yep. Also built into next year's budget is another capital outlay project. We found these projects really great to keep the facilities up and do those little jobs that help keep things in line so they don't become bigger problems down the road. We haven't identified the project yet, but at the April presentation, we will have the project identified at that time.
And what we mean by we haven't identified yet, we have a few we're picking from to see which one would be the most appropriate. It's not that we're not finding one, it's which one do we select.
And again, that has to be a project that's included in our building condition survey, so we have to make sure it's something that's identified as a need, and we have plenty of those, like Doug said. Retirement system expenses, not actually too bad. Even with everything going on in the last couple of years, the stock market's been pretty consistent, it seems. So the teacher retirement system is only going up from 9.5% to 9.8%, which is a 2.8% increase, which is very, we can work with that. That's not bad at all. Employee retirement system is a little higher. As you can see, there's 3 different tier systems. The reason why there's 3 different tier systems is because the tier 3 and 4, their contributions end after 10 years. Tier 5 has contributions that go on as long as you're employed. So the employee's paying more money into the Tier 5. And Tier 6 has lifetime contributions, and they're adjusted based on income. So those contribution rates are even a little lower because the employees are paying in even more at that tier level. So they're looking at about 11% increase, but that's a lot fewer employees than the TRS system. So again, we can work with that. And the teacher retirement system does have the same tier structure, Tier 3, 4, 5, 6. Except they come up with an average for all those tiers in one number. So that's why there's 2 different breakouts there.
And there's always a question we typically get at some time from the public is, why is the school district contributing to the retirement system? Why don't we negotiate, move out of this? This is something that is mandated by the state, and by that, I almost want to say it's in the Constitution, but it's something that isn't changed. The formula's not changed. They have a 5-year running average they use. They have a whole different group that actually analyzes the market and manages and sees this.
You can't opt out, right? Health insurance, we're in the 3rd year of the self-insured plan. We did put the pharmacy portion of that plan out to bid, and that resulted in lower overall costs. We got better discounts and the better rebates from that, so that was definitely worth the effort to do, and we're able to provide the same coverage that we have for employees. So even with that, we're looking at about a 6.5% increase, which is still probably better than a lot of private companies and independent rates out there that you see if you went to the open market. So right now we're working off a 6.5 increase on health insurance. So if you look at our expenses at this point, as I say at the bottom of the slide, we'll have a better breakdown at the next meeting. We'll dive a little deeper into each of these categories. But most of the categories are seeing a minimal expense, and the one that's really seeing the most, obviously, is employee benefits, because the health insurance is driving that. But some of those areas of employee benefits are not changing very much. Our workers' comp, our unemployment insurance, we're not seeing much change there, so that kind of makes the average about 5.25% increase in benefits. So overall, the budget looking at a 2.27 increase in spending with everything in place that we have this year. But with the revenues being so flat and that little over 2% growth in our expenses, we're still at this point looking at a $1.2 million we'd call it a budget gap, the difference between those two numbers. So that's our mission for the next couple month or two, is to really watch the state aid situation, look at our staffing needs and internally, and work to make that number come down quite a bit and make it ultimately be at zero when we go out to vote in May.
And one important thing to remember is, I'll say you look back half a decade, 5 years, the state has never given us a change from where they were that would cover this gap to 1.2. I think that's fair to say, so we're not thinking, oh, we're waiting for the state to give us more money and then we're hanging on those hopes. Where it is we have some retirements we have to take in here. We have some more analysis to do with different budget lines, look at BOCES codes, all different costs all over the place. Is there anywhere that this can be managed? John's been successful in previous years doing this, so we're very hopeful for this year. And it gets harder and harder each year, but, I want to give a kudos to the Buildings and Grounds at this point, because they do go around and do a lot of retrofitting for energy savings costs, so that's been helping us, one of the big things. And I also want to thank the public, because they did approve a capital project. It won't help for this budget, but we are going to be putting solar panels on, which will further help it. So there are things that the district is constantly doing to mitigate costs.
Yep. So at this point, the next steps in this process, I did finalize the tax cap calculation this week based on numbers we got from BOCES, so that is done. Review budget projections with departments and administrators, review our use of the reserves and unallocated fund balance, evaluate the retirements, of course, and enrollment changes that we see. Monitor is probably the most important part of this, monitor the state aid projection for next year, and we'll review our BOCES contracts for next year as well. So in May, we will have, instead of 3 propositions, we won't have that proposition to access the technology reserve. So we'll have 2 propositions, one being the general fund budget, which is not determined yet. And then the proposition 2 will be for vehicle replacement, and we always do a vehicle replacement every year, 3 or 4 buses. This year we're going to do 3 full-size diesel buses and 2 30-passenger smaller buses, about $511,000. And we do that through a bond, and it's independent of the general fund. There are 2 board member seats that will be open. So I'd like to thank Mr. Haberl and Mr. Lowry for their service to the district for many years. I'm sure there'll be many opportunities to thank them between now and the end of this year. But I just want to say thank you for everything, your support, and always having the students and district residents in mind when you make decisions, and you've been a great asset to the district. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to say, echo that, because they've really been showing great leadership through some very difficult times, not only COVID, but times before that. So thank you, and the information's up there on our website, or contacting Mrs. Sadowski, the district clerk, for the petition information. And we don't know all the details about how many signatures you have to get. Last year they waived that. Currently it isn't waived, so you would have to be getting signatures at this point. But be sure to call into Mrs. Sadowski if you have any questions.
We always put up the contact information if you want to contact the governor. Here's his contact information. Our local representatives are Senator Patrick Gallivan and Assemblyman David DiPietro, and we have the contact information for their offices.
And I already have met with both the senator and the assemblyman and had conversations with them. It was a group setting with multiple superintendents for the senator. It was a one-on-one with the assemblyman. They have been in the situations this multiple years because they've been in there of where the funding comes in at this part with the projection. I think they fully understand the impact to grouping the categorical aids. They understand the expenditures for the districts. But I still have additional meetings set up with them. Typically it's a lobby day where I would go to Albany. I would not be going to Albany this year. We're holding them all virtually. So that it will still be happening this year.
So a look at our calendar to work through our budget process. Our next scheduled meeting is April 14th. However, if we do well, whether we hear information or not from the state, we will update the board at the March meeting just to let them know if we have more information on how the state budget process is progressing. And then our formal presentation will be on April 14th. We'll have a budget hearing on May 11th, and then the vote is on May 18th.
And currently, the vote is still in person, like we had the capital project, but, you know, I think everyone says now with COVID, just wait a couple of days and something might change.
So any questions that you have on where we are right now in the budget process?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm talking through these headphones. Weird. I just wanted to make a comment that these numbers will be changing and you're going to be looking at things. So we don't have a lot of questions now. It's not because we're not paying attention. It's just that, you know, there are still things, there's a lot to discuss. And,
Absolutely.
Changes will be happening. So
Yes.
thank you for putting all of this together. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's very thorough and easy to understand, and you did a great job, John.
And I absolutely agree with you. Right now, it's almost unfair to ask you if you have questions because you're seeing it for the first time. Sometimes we generate them because they will be changing as you're starting to think about it. And I know you guys will, email in John and myself questions so that we're prepared for the next presentation. And that's why in March, with what we get in, we will answer those questions because as a board, you typically do send those things in. And also the next presentation, we will have some breakdowns of the categories under expenditure. So like under instruction, we'll be seeing exactly the impact with instruction in different areas like that for the board, because that's been asked, and you will be having that at that next one, so we can get into some more detail if you'd like. Well, I shouldn't say if you like, because I know you like, because you've asked for it.
I have a question. For people who are interested in running for one of the two vacant seats, currently, you said currently they are going to have to get signatures. Isn't the number of signatures tied directly to the previous year's vote? Do you know how many signatures somebody would need to get this year to put their name on the ballot?
What's that, Chuck? It's actually tied to ours, directly to ours, yeah. Chuck was asking if it was tied to the gubernatorial vote, and it's not. It's actually tied to our last vote that we had in the district. Mrs. Sadowski's not here tonight, just for a personnel reason, and everything's okay. But I want to say, I thought she had said the other day like 1,000, but I could be way off on my number. So please don't quote me on that. This is one I'm going to definitely say I don't have an exact number. But what I can do is I can put it up on that webpage. I can try to contact her. So when people look at where the information is, we can put just a minute. Cindy is listening.
You know what, New York State School
69,
Boards
I'm way off,
been,
69. Way off, 69 if I read it right, and she'll tell me if I'm right or not. Yep, 69 is correct.
New York
I'm
State
way
School
off.
Boards is negotiating, meeting with the governor, not negotiating, meeting with the governor, and they're trying to get that number that's needed pushed back to the 2019 limit. Based on what NISBA has said, is they do not see everyone getting the ballots like they did last year. Okay, we would go back to normal. However, if someone wanted an absentee ballot, they could mail in, and COVID would be a reason. Okay, but again, that information is all preliminary, and that's what NISBA is projecting will be the final outcome, with the vote being on the regular budget vote date that it is scheduled. So as soon as we hear anything at ECSB, we will send that information out as well.
And this is also an item in our board discussion agenda, so we'll have a little bit more information than I got 4 people, letting them know about the process. I don't want to take away from the budget discussion if people have more questions.
And so all this information is available at the website, that with the link that I had in my presentation. That presentation will be up tomorrow morning on our website. And at the tab Board of Education, you'll find all the information. Petitions must be returned to a district office by 5 o'clock on Monday, April 19th.
unless there's anything more, Sharon, we would turn, John, you all set? If not, we'll turn it back over to Sharon.
Right, and we won't be beginning calling our regular meeting to order until 7 o'clock as published, and we'll have some friends joining us, so we'll be calling the regular meeting to order at 7. So if people need to twice, feel free.
Is there any reason why nobody can see me?
Everyone, Louise, everyone can see you. There's the
Oh.
camera over there is the one that is live streaming.
Oh, that one over there,
These
okay.
pictures are just for up there, so the people
Oh.
live streaming can pick up
Okay.
the people that are zooming in.
Thanks, and I just need somebody to...
Oh, you mean the, well, Matt, do you have a thing that we could put up for the live streamer saying the meeting will begin at
All right, I would like to call to order our regular meeting of the Board of Education tonight. Our live stream is all set. We are live streaming, Doug, correct? Yes, okay.
Yep, you're good if I turn my mic on.
All right. Welcome to all who have come to observe the meeting of the Iroquois Central School District's Board of Education. There are 2 periods of recognition of guests listed on the meeting agenda. The first is for comments regarding agenda items. The second is for topics not on the agenda. Speakers may offer comments related to school operations and programs, but the board cannot hear personnel complaints against any individual associated with the school system. Please address these concerns to the appropriate administrator. If you wish to be recognized, please fill out the appropriate form and turn it in tonight to Mr. Schofield. As per policy number 1514, public participation at board meetings, public comment is limited to 15 minutes total, unless the board suspends this limit. Each person is given up to 3 minutes in which to address the board. Additionally, no more than 3 people may speak on a single topic unless the board also waives this limitation. This is a meeting held in public rather than a public meeting, which means that we will not be engaging in a dialogue with members of the community this evening. District personnel will follow up with you regarding your concerns. Please rest assured that we are listening carefully and we take seriously what you have to say. Please demonstrate respect by speaking to the issues, sharing ideas and opinions, but not engaging in personal attacks. The board appreciates your willingness to share your concerns and celebrations. Please be advised that this meeting is streamed live and the recording will be posted on the Iroquois website.
Sharon, just so you know, currently everyone is streaming live. We do not have any people in attendance.
Okay, thank you. Okay. This evening we do have some guests with us. I'm going to be from Wales Primary joining us to say the pledge. But we would also like to incorporate it with our pledge this evening. We'd also like to remain standing after the pledge and acknowledge a moment of silence for a former Iroquois teacher, Ralph Cheney, who recently passed away. He retired several years ago and was an industrial arts teacher at our high school. So we would like to stand and acknowledge a moment of silence after our pledge. And tonight, leading us in that pledge from Wales Primary, we have Sam and Katie. So I'm going to turn it over to them to lead us in the pledge tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, and a special thank you to Sam and Katie. You did such a good job. It's must make you nervous to come and do this for the board, especially in our Zoom meeting, but you did a fantastic job, and you make us very proud representing our school district. Good job, guys.
Thank you.
And with that, we're going to move on to one of my other favorite parts of our board agenda, and that is our student report. So tonight, joining us from the high school, we have a senior. We have Emily, who is a student athlete, a member of the girls' basketball team, and she is here to give a report to the Board of Education. So take it away, Emily, and thank you for joining us.
Hi, my name's Emily. I'm a member of the girls' basketball team at Iroquois. And on behalf of every winter sport athlete, we would like to thank the Board of Education and the administration for allowing winter sports to happen. Sports bring out so much excitement into the community and even into just kids that don't even play sports in school. And it's something that really brings the school and community together. And it's amazing to be out on the court with my best friends, especially during this time of uncertainty. Right now, there are no spectators allowed at any of our games, but we are trying to live stream. Last night we had our first game and we live streamed it. So hopefully maybe spectators will be able to come towards the end of the season, but right now we're just super thankful for the opportunity to play. And so for precautions for, what we take to help ourselves stay safe against COVID-19 is all the players and coaches wear masks during practice, warm-ups, timeouts, halftime, anytime, we're not actually playing, we wear masks. And we are all socially distant on the bench, have our own water bottles, and really try to sanitize after every time we come off the court. Also, our coaches sanitize the balls after every drill and practice. And even though I don't see every team, I see every team that I do see, I really see them doing a great job with sanitizing, social distancing. Everyone's wearing their mask at all times. So it's something that, we're doing it really safely and still having a great time. So I wanted to thank everyone for allowing winter sports to happen.
Well, I want to thank you guys too, because even walking around the school, I haven't walked in any practices yet, but walking around the school, I see all the students really doing exactly what you said, following what was put forth, and I really think that's been making a huge difference in COVID cases in the Iroquois. So thank you, and I'm glad you're able to get out there and play basketball. I did enjoy playing that myself when I was younger. Now it's not so much.
Thank you, Emily. It really is. We talk our board meetings, but it is extremely important that we hear from those of you that are in the school what you're going through and what it feels like to you. So thank you for coming tonight and for sharing that with us. So thank you very much. We do have, I would like to and thank you, Dr. Ramirez, for coming. Anybody that needs to step out, you are welcome to stay for our exciting board meetings. But if you have other things to do, like homework, we understand. So if you need to step out of our meeting, we completely understand that. But once again, thank you from the board for all of our students who joined us tonight. And with that, we're going to move into our board discussion and news worth sharing time. And this evening, I would like to kick that off and get us started. On behalf of the Board of Education, we would like to share we have heard from some of you in your views about a statement by a board member at the January 13th, 2021 meeting concerning the events that occurred in Washington and at the Capitol on January 6th. I have asked the board member, Michelle, to respond, and she will do so in a moment. In response to her statement, the board received a petition from some members of the community asking for our consideration to remove Michelle for expressing her opinion during a board meeting. The board will not seek her removal because her statement did not involve misconduct involving her official duties, such as engaging in an unauthorized exercise of power or intentionally failing to exercise power to the detriment of the district. This is the only reason that a board member can be removed by the board. We do understand why some felt that it was not an appropriate time or place to express her thoughts on the January 6th events, but I'd like to ask Michelle to address this with you directly.
Thank you, Sharon. So, to clarify, at the last board meeting, a few minutes before the board meeting started, the superintendent indicated that he had prepared a statement to address the events of the previous week at the Capitol and asked the board president or any other board member if they intended to make a statement regarding those events. The events of January 6th were historic, and I believe it was important to acknowledge them. In hindsight, I wish I had had time to prepare my thoughts and had been more eloquent. I certainly did not mean for this to distract from our regular board business. To clarify, my intention was to reiterate that I take our elections and our role as elected officials very seriously. And I'm honored to serve as a school board member, working alongside people of high integrity and who share a commitment, even when we disagree, to keep our students at the forefront of everything we do. So, as I have for the past 9 years, I will continue to work with my fellow board members to meet our collective goals, to address the needs of the district, and most importantly, the needs of our students and our community. Thank you, and I really appreciate the board.
Thank you, Michelle. The board will continue to be focused on our responsibilities, and our energies will be spent on ensuring that we fulfill the mission to provide our students a strong academic program and the needed support for their mental, physical health, and wellness. And in that regard, of course, getting our kids back into school safely is a top priority. The district is in regular communication with our local health professionals and officials from the state education department to do our very best to ensure everyone's safety during the pandemic. We want nothing more than to have our kids in school full time, but the question is and remains, can we, just like other school districts, do this safely and in accordance with our requirements? Our district has space challenges to meet the fundamental requirement that all students are to be at least 6 feet apart in the classroom and common areas of the schools at all times. The district continues to review and reflect on solutions to this challenge while keeping safety our primary concern. And we as a board continue to monitor the district's progress on this goal. Of note have been a plan for our KM1 students that Mr. Schofield is going to be addressing in greater detail in his superintendent's report. Adjustments and improvements to the ventilation systems, such as installing the ionization modules. And then the constant communication with the New York State Health Department, the Erie County Health Department, superintendent groups, Erie County School Board Association, New York State School Board Association, to make sure that we have the most current regulations and we share ideas. I would also like to add that if you would like to constructively support these and the other goals of the board, we welcome you to run for board membership to fill the 2 openings that we will vote on at the May annual school district meeting and election. I'd like to thank our current board members for volunteering to serve our community and the sacrifice of their time and their dedication to serve the needs of our students and the staff of the district, especially during this extremely challenging time. Please let me know if you have any questions about that process. And I do believe that we have other news worth sharing that we'd like to talk about this evening.
Yeah, Sharon, I have one thing. I attended the Erie County Association of School Boards seminar with Dr. Rick Timms last week. And, you know, once again, I mean, he is probably, you know, one of the foremost minds as far as understanding, you know, state aid and what it means to our public schools. And one of the things that I did come away with from that particular seminar, well, actually, there are 2 things, very important things. The first is the bundling, and John had talked about it a little bit, bundling all of our aid under services aid. to me, that's a very dangerous road for the state to be taking. And the consequence on the school districts down the road could be severe, because once aids are bundled, everything kind of gets mishmashed together. For instance, just a general thing, when the governor comes out and says that, you know, we've got X number of billions of dollars for education aid this year. Well, that's pretty much a bundled statement. Most people would think when he's talking about education, he's talking about public school education. And as we all know, that couldn't be farther from the truth. For instance, including in his number is charter school funding, private school funding, scholarships for universities, etc., none of which they are mandated to fund under our state constitution. It's that public education. So right away, it gives the public a skewed view of what is actually happening with public school funding. The other thing that I found very disturbing is there's a new line item in addition to what John had pointed out with the stars. It's the local school district adjustment. And basically what I see that adjustment, and it's a negative adjustment, it's just the gap elimination adjustment renamed. Now, we all know what we went through, you know, several years ago as far as the gap elimination adjustment. The state took their deficit and put it on the backs of public, to the detriment of public education and public funding. So those are two very important things that I think as school board members, we all need to keep a very close eye on as time goes on, and we need to encourage all of our elected representatives to get this under control. I mean, it's time that someone needs to stand up, you know, to our governor, and because this is where it's coming from. And they now have both houses in our state government, so that shouldn't be an issue. If, as he says, how important education is to our students, it's time that he starts acting on those words instead of hiding ways of shifting the tax burden to our local taxes. I mean, we've seen that decrease every single year. The percentage of tax dollars that we receive back from the state keeps getting smaller and smaller. Now, all of our residents have paid a lot of taxes to New York State over the years, and any one particular year, but the percentage of those dollars coming back to fund our education is smaller and smaller, and we're turning around and we have to ask our community members, well, yeah, you know, we know you paid a whole lot in state taxes, but the state decided that that money was more important to be used on something other than education. So if we want to maintain the educational levels that we have, we need you to give us some more money. So we really do, it's got to be another concerted effort, not only from school board members and superintendents, but the community as well. We need to really start hounding our elected representatives to get this under control, or it's going to bode very bad for us in the future.
I would like to add, at Erie County School Boards, we also had a DigiStream presentation, and Cassidy Gertis did a phenomenal job. She provided a lot of information regarding social media and investigations, and so we are actually going to probably bring her back for an in-person meeting once we're back in person for a speed boarding event. Also, Dr. Jill O'Malley is in the process of setting up meetings with our elected officials, and I believe Michelle was at the legislative meeting, and we volunteered that we would want to be a part of a meeting when she gets those set up. And the last piece of information is on March 27th, there is supposed to be a prospective school board workshop. And at this point, we don't have the details as far as whether it will be in person or virtual, but we usually have one of the school attorneys that we work with present. And there will be potential school board members from throughout Erie County there, or at least virtually also, if it goes virtual. And we'll have a panel discussion of current board members to give anyone that's thinking of running for the school board an idea of, you know, what they're up against and what they can expect. Thank you.
Just another thing I would like to add, because it's an important initiative in our school district right now, and that is our strategic planning continues to move forward. We have met with our last meeting last night. Our core team is meeting bi-weekly. The core team includes 40 people, various stakeholders. I'm very, very impressed with the dedication and the work ethic and the willingness to jump in and do the work on the behalf of the school district. We continue to discuss that we recognize that our school district has many strengths due to the efforts of everybody across the board, the community, the school district teachers, the students, the families, the administration. I'm going to forget somebody, I know. Oh, the board? Everybody's collective efforts. And in fact, it came out resoundingly last night that this shared dedication to the school district, and currently been working on the vision statements and the mission statements, and it continues to be a very positive process. If we can have one commercial break for everybody that is tuning in, and we need to want to invite everybody to commit fill out those surveys. The deadline is, somebody correct me, is it the 13th?
It's Friday the 12th at 3 o'clock.
Friday the 12th. So we have just the remainder of this week left with surveys. They are on our school district website. That includes the community survey, and it includes the family survey. In addition, all of our middle school students and high school students should have received their surveys, with an invitation from our student ambassadors on the core committee. We have 9 students, which is fantastic. And so we jointly sent a letter with the students and myself inviting everybody to complete that survey and be part of the data that we get back. It's invaluable that people put their input in so that we can dig into that data and set the course for the future. So it's an exciting time. I don't know if Chuck or Michelle want to jump in and add anything. They are an important part of that core team, as well as the commitment from the rest of the board. All of the board members would like to be on the core team. All the board members want to be involved in every step. But we also have, we're going to be breaking out in strategic focus groups. And so the rest of the board will be involved in those focus groups, which will be starting as soon as we are looking at our data and kind of set our course for our work. It's an exciting time.
Yeah, I would just like to add, Sharon, and reiterate just how important it is that we get as many surveys completed and get back as possible. The larger the data set that we have to work from, the bigger sampling that we have of our community as a whole. And as you said, the strategic plan will provide us with a roadmap as far as where we're going or where Iroquois is headed into the future. And again, I would encourage all of our community members to stay vigilant, check our school website as those positions as team members, come up, because we do value everyone's input.
Yep, I'll add on to that and say, one, that the surveys are right on the front page of the district website, the main page. If you scroll down a little bit, it just says strategic plan surveys. And also that the surveys are being used to get input to see what's important to our faculty and staff and our students and our community so that we can set the course in the right direction. We don't want to set a 5-year goal that isn't in keeping with, where we all want to go together. So please fill that out. We're not looking to find out what's happening now, really. We're looking to see where we should be going. So thank you for, we've had a lot of community participation already, which is great. And we're looking forward to seeing what other groups are saying.
I think an important part of piece of our meeting last night was sharing the just how we look at that data. Just I guess so that people we have talked in the past about people filling out surveys and wanting people to share their honest opinions. And when we looked at sample data from another school district, not our district, and people really got a chance to see how it's grouped together, that we as a board have in our training with PLC, but how the data is grouped together, how it's looking for patterns and trends. It's not tracing individual people. It's really looking for patterns and trends in general. And so I think that was a meaningful takeaway from last night's meeting that maybe give some comfort to people as they're filling out surveys if they were uncomfortable. But hopefully you're not, and that we can all participate in that. I took my parent one it seemed quite short to me for the high school. It was not consuming at all.
It's fairly painless.
And I guess to come from a superintendent's perspective on this, what does the strategic plan mean to me? And really looking at the board, I'm really thankful that you're taking this initiative on. Because I believe there's a saying, an individual can move a stone, 2 people can move a boulder, but a community can move a mountain. And as a chief steward of the district and hearing this mountain, we want to move a vision of where we want to move instruction to here and having the community come together, it's able to be accomplished. And through this process, we'll revisit the vision, the mission, and from there we'll also have the beliefs and values of what people cherish around here, so that as we move in the direction we're going, it's representing the community and the mountain of instruction can move for the students for their future and will be student-based for a long time to come and moving them forward of where they need to be too for their future and their concerns. So to me, it's like to be a millionaire to, ask the audience and getting the right answer every time. And so that's the best thing out of it. So it's a great endeavor to be in, and thank you for taking this initiative.
I think it's funny. Another takeaway in our meetings, the consultant has often said, I don't always work with a lot of districts like yours that are, high functioning district, which I keep feeling like it sounds like we didn't pick the person with the right experience. That's not what they're saying. I think really the message you're trying to send is that, we talked last night about the enemy of great is like good. Like when we're sitting there and thinking that things are good, but we want to be outstanding, and if we don't set that as our goal, then we're not heading in that direction. We can't really go anywhere without a roadmap. So it is an exciting time, and I thank the participants and look forward to more participation. Are there any other board members with news worth sharing? I can't see in person. Is there? Nope. All right. And with that, we move on to our superintendent report tonight.
Okay, so with it, I just really labeled it instructional update, but there's a lot within that. But I really need to start off with, I always want to start off talking about COVID and where we are with the district. And in the last 24 hours, the key point I want to talk about tonight is COVID at Marilla. So the 4th grade at Marilla is going to be going remote. And the reason that they're going to go remote is because within the last 3 days, 8 students, and actually in walking into the meeting tonight, I heard of 2 more that will be on the reports tomorrow that have tested positive for COVID. So there's definitely a cluster going on there. So what we did this morning, when I found about it last night, actually after the strategic plan meeting, is we immediately called the Department of Health, worked with the Department of Health, got their recommendations, reviewed all the cases, where could there be possible close contact, and really that's still in a little bit of a question, so that's why we made this proactive. And I don't really like calling it proactive because there are 10 people who have COVID, but we took this action to have fourth grade on remote. So the principal, what the principal did today, Mrs. Stanfield, called all the parents, put out a Connect Ed message to the entire student body, all the families at Marilla, so they knew that. We offered testing. I got special permission from the Department of Health so that we could do testing right at the school for all the students that wanted it. We could do all the testing for, which is the fourth graders. We could do all the testing of the faculty, and then really track that, and then we're going to go in these rooms and re-sterilize them and really make sure that they're safe. We're lucky. There's 3 more days before we go on break, which will actually give another long period for a spread. But that's where I really want to encourage the community with this as a model of why social distancing is important and being vigilant all the time. Because if it comes in, I call you have your little group of a circle that you hang in. If it comes in your circle, it can spread easily, and you have to be vigilant and watch it. And then when something happens, take the really right actions to mitigate it and stop it right there before it can go on to other individuals. Does the board have any questions about that or any of the actions we took at Marilla with the fourth grade today? And it is amazing how fast that happens. The next thing
Actually, I do have a quick question. Have they went remote, are they going to the half days, or are they going to stay in their cohorts because it's a short amount of time?
They are going, actually the last night when I heard it was starting to happen, it seemed to be in one classroom. So even before I talked to the Department of Health, we had that class go 100% remote today. So all 3 fourth grade classes at Marilla will be 100% remote for Thursday and Friday.
Oh, so they're all staying all day together. Got it.
And then for the break week, and then February 22nd, they'll come back in with cohort A, because this really only impacted one cohort. Cohort B, there were no cases that I know of in cohort A, so it was very limited, which is nice having the students in on an A and a B cohort. I know we looked at something different a while ago, but it really worked out well in this case to provide us, to put barriers around for other people to be safe.
Thank you.
And thank you to the Department of Health for allowing us to do that testing right there at the school. That was great for the community. Some of them had already gone and got tested, but thank you to them. They deserve praise for their responsiveness in this too. New York State Education Department is submitting a waiver to the federal government for 3 through 8 and Regents testing. So to quote Chancellor Young, he stated, in the light of the ongoing pandemic, we have determined that spring 2021 state assessments cannot be safely, equitably, and fairly administered. And so what they had is, before they did this waiver, they had a public comment period that ended February 5th. We put that out at Connect Ed messages, so thank you very much to the public who took time to answer that. I did it myself, expressing their views on it. Some people might be in favor, some might not be in favor, but I really think, for me as an instructional leader, my opinion is that Chancellor Young said it correctly in his little piece there about saying how the assets cannot be safely, equitably, and fairly administered through this time of this school year. What can the board do? If the board wanted to make a resolution we've done that in the past years, so something we felt strongly in to go on. Typically, we send those to the state government, but the state government is already moving forward with the waiver, so if we would have done anything, I think we would be sending that to the Secretary of Education, which was a new secretary in January, so that is something the board could do if it chose to do. So while we're talking about the State Education Department, the interim commissioner, Rosa, has been elected as the new permanent state education commissioner. So congratulations, I think, goes to her. And I look forward to the direction she will be leading New York State, as my understanding is she has 30 years of instructional experience and with instruction and administration. This has been inclusive education, cooperative teaching, student achievement, and policy implementation. So I really look forward to closing to her. I know the last commissioner, I had multiple insightful conversations about trying to where education go in New York State, and really looking to one of my things is trying to change the Regents exams to kind of really have it where there's a more thought-provoking process, where they're using resources in it, doing research on computers, rather than just memorizing things and having to regurgitate it, because I think that's more a real-world application. So I look forward to engaging her in those same type of conversations. February break is next week, and the free lunches for children will be available for that week. So I want to remind everyone, we have put that out in Connect Ed messages. This is a federal and state funded program. The lunch pickup will be at the high school February 16th and 19th at 10 a.m. You will get multiple meals during those pickups. Thank you, John, for really organizing that and working with our food service, Personal Touch, and having that there. Now, if you're unable to pick up, just call in, call to the bus garage. So anyone that needing assistance, we will provide that. So if you have some situation where you can't, we will help you out with that. And I know the bus garage has people that they've been calling already that have been needed assistance in the past to make sure that they know that that is available to them. How long will we continue this? Right now, I'm planning on continuing as long as there's the federal and state funding. At the point that we see where that is going to end, we would really need to come back to the board and talk about it, because that is one of the fiscal implications to budgets. If we were going to do anything here, I know in the summer we had talked about it and we were looking to do something, and then the state and federal came about. So right now I'm not looking to have that discussion. Let's see what the federal and state government are willing to do for the future for our children. Any questions about anything so far? 10 a.m. to noon. Yep, 10 to 12. 16th and 19th. Yep, and it's on our website. So, and the people who've been taking advantage of this, I think, are well aware of it, because obviously they've been taking advantage of it. So hopefully they know where it is. If they need assistance for something dropped off at their house because they're not able to pick it up. Yep. Athletics. So we heard Emily speak tonight, and it was great. I almost wanted to give my little thing right with her, but it was her time. And so New York State is giving the go-ahead for high and medium risk sports. Section 6 has collaborated with the Department of Health in developing safety protocols, and I know that took multiple meetings, and they really did a good job with it. One of the things that they put in place, and Emily talked about it, was spectators are not allowed. Now, in response, Iroquois will be live streaming the athletic events. Now, personally, I think that's great. Being an administrator here, being the superintendent, I can actually walk in the building and sit there. So I'm thinking I'll sit in one side of the stands, and Dean, the principal, can sit in the other side, and we can go defense to try to have some encouragement going on while they're there, besides being cute. I thought that might be nice for the athletes. Coaches have shared the live streaming with the parents, and it is also available to anyone else. So everyone listening to us, spread the word to your friends that you can go to our website, go to the athletic page. There are links there already for the different events. And so rather than watching the NBA, you can come and watch ours. The boys swimming should be, all of them should be, the swimming should be there. That's, I always enjoyed watching that in the Olympics, so you can come and watch that now. Wrestling is pushed off. There's, I'm trying to think of what else is happening this season. It's escaping me, but you can come and watch all of those. I have received word that parents are lobbying Section 6 to adjust the requirement for no spectators, so I just wanted to point that out to the board, because in athletics, Section 6 is the one who looks at what's going on in the different areas for safety protocols in working with the Department of Health. So how does Iroquois determine what is safe for athletes? And really, we're an instructional institution. How we determine what is safe is we would work out directly with the Department of Health, but with Section 6, they are the ones, their superintendent representatives on it, that go to the meetings with Section 6, sit with the Department of Health. And when I say the Department of Health in this case, I don't just mean Erie County Department of Health, because we cross boundaries. So really it was Department of Health from the multiple counties that we go to all came together and looked at this. And then what we do from there, what I do internally from there, is I take that guidance and apply it to clubs and student activities and look for parallels there. So with the clubs and activities, we look for parallels that might be going on in the classroom, So for instance, we don't have skiing here as a varsity sport, but other schools do. So the state provided guidance on that. And then the SGB was looking to have possibly having seniors, and I think it went today, on a ski trip with tubing. So we looked at the guidelines for the skiing activities. We looked with Holiday Valley, make sure they paralleled, and then they went on the trip in this safe environment that was done by the professionals in the health field. Any questions about any of that? So the big news that went out Monday, at least I think it's great news, is the modifying of the kindergarten and first grade instructional delivery. So I don't think it's been any secret, because I put it out in multiple messages and talked about it, how we've been looking, the district's been looking to, how the district's been continuously reviewing classroom space in an effort to bring the entire buildings back and still follow. I mean, the important part is still follow the Department of Health guidelines. And, with the 6 foot and the mask and shield requirements. The reason for that continuous review is that nothing can really replace in-person learning. Having that contact there, it's really what you want. I mean, they talk about contact time when you're walking around as a teacher. They're teaching you how to teach, of making sure you're connecting with the students, just moving your proximity to them so you can just kind of glance at what they're doing. There's really nothing that replaces that. I think in just about everyone's mind in education. And Iroquois is known for and will continue to put students first. So if this is what's good for them, that's why we continue looking at that. So with COVID, Department of Health guidelines, it caused all the schools to adapt their instructional models in this extremely short timeline back in August. We got the guidance at the end of August. And even though in-person instruction is really what we look for and the preferred method, we had to find another method of delivery for the material. But the hard part is we were losing something with that social, emotional well-being for the student. So Iroquois never giving up on improving. That's one of the themes with the strategic plan that came across last night, of that constant moving forward, which is why that's such a great group to be working with. So we started looking at the different buildings and what could be brought back, and and they were reviewed. And in this search, we found that 2 grade levels could return, with creating new classroom space and faculty rooms and book rooms. So in looking at this and shifting, we found out two grade levels. So which grade levels? That's a big question. Which grade levels would be best to be brought back? And kindergarten and first grade levels, they are really the emerging learners. They're the ones that other people have had some time to learn some of these skills. So them being emerging learners, that's why we selected first and kindergarten to return. And I really want to thank the support staff, the teachers, the administrators for making this happen, because it coming back from January and then getting to February, this constant review and making this change happen was really good. And as with any change, and with doing anything, the Board of Education does ask great questions in supporting, and with my Friday messages, keeping you updated, I do receive questions from you. So making sure the public hears the same questions that have been asking, and you ask these questions really to support the students, the faculty, and the district. So to go through some of these, and other ones I heard, but to go through these, why wasn't this done in September? I think that's probably the best question that's out there, because social distancing and mask mandates haven't changed. So if we could do it now, why didn't we recognize and do it back then? So first, I want to make it clear to the entire community that we are still following the 6 foot, the mask shield requirements. So in having kindergarten, first grade come back, those are still being followed. So this leaves why not in September? Honestly, if I knew now, then, what I know now, if I said that correctly, we would have done it. But back in September, the concern was just staying in school, was just starting school, staying in school, and having the students come in, connect with their teachers, and learn how to work remotely was one of the primary focuses we had, because there was a real concern that once we came back in September, that there was going to be a rampant clusters going on in schools, and it was going to close. So that was where our site was, and that's why we didn't see this. Then in October, we started looking to bring back the buildings, because we're saying, hey, we're doing really well. And if you remember back in September, I wasn't putting out notices of COVID or happening in the school. We were doing very well at Iroquois. A little different in some other districts, but we were doing well. And then as we were starting to bring that back, and we weren't having much success in finding the space for buildings with a 6-foot rule, November brought in the switching to remote and starting the random testing. So that's really what took our focus there. And for December, we were 100% remote. And that brought in the holidays. What's going to happen with the other holidays coming back of that? And so then in January, what we really wanted to do in the beginning was monitor the cases of us coming back. And as we found out that, because I saw what happened after Thanksgiving, which is why we came back when we did in January, because they weren't here. And we came back in January, and that was really successful. And so then we switched back to looking in, and then we brought our focus down to looking back by grade level, because we knew we didn't have the space for buildings. And that's really where we are in February. So by about February 3rd, 4th, we're like, we really think we can do this. There's a lot of little things we had to look at and arrange. We had to rearrange schedules, new class lists, securing desks, rearranging locations for student material, staff mailboxes, faculty rooms, securing new staff, teaching material, and we're able to accomplish all that, and the shift is going to start February 22nd. So when we come back from break, because of the experiences from the other breaks, we feel that's a nice appropriate time, because there's even questions, well, could this break be different? Right now, we don't have the evidence that it would and the data that it would, but it's always a concern, and we will monitor that. And it's important. Well, we have 4 months left. Should we just stay what we're doing, with what we're doing for the next 4 months? And but we have the belief that in-person instruction is really the best way for delivering learning, and so therefore inputting students first and knowing this is why we would take this step at this time, because I remember as a superintendent I was told make the hard decisions, and this is a hard decision to make because you have all these different variables that could happen, and I really want to thank the support of the entire community for taking this step for this. What is tough is I know other people are going to be calling and say, well, you did it for K1, you did it for K1. Can we get second grade now? Can we get this grade? Can we have another one come in? And well, we were trying that. That's where we were trying to do the buildings. So really with the elementaries, this is where we are right now, and I actually want to monitor this a little bit to see what the results are. They should, everything we've put together, all the data we have, it should work out very well. Let's see. So the new teachers, for this program are on the agenda. So there's 2 people on this. So you already saw that, because I know you review the agendas. That's why they're on there. The principals have already contacted the parents. So if the parents who will be having the new teachers know about it already. We did a really planned out of how the board, the Friday memo was given the final thing. We met with the teachers so they were aware. So when people called in, they would know it. And then the Connect Ed message went out. At the same time, parents were calling families. So that worked out very well there. As I mentioned earlier, some buildings will be using faculty rooms. Others will be using book rooms. And so that's where the shifting, and we had a move, which also makes sense with this break week, because now we have the week to do that and make sure everything's in place and ready for the children when they come back. So I'm glad to say with the specials, we were able to work those out too. We did not have to hire new staff there, because remember with some of the specials for some of the remotes, they were doing virtual learning while they weren't there, so it balanced out. But I also want to thank the teachers, because it is a shift for them, and I'm hoping we stop making shifts, because transitions are one of the hardest things to do in education. So I would like to get to a point where we stop that, and hopefully for kindergarten, first grade, that we will be there. And then the fully remote students, they reached out to those parents, and a majority of them wanted to stay fully remote. That's where they are, and so we're still affording that for them. But there was 1 or 2 that decided to come back, so that's great to have them back, but we do have space for all of them. That's one thing from the beginning I've said. I don't want to get caught in a position where someone changes their mind and we don't have room for them in the beginning, and the board has supported that, so thank you for that. Let's see. Who should the parent contact with instructional concerns? So if something is happening with this, one of the first and key person that they should always contact if you're having an instructional concern is the teacher. Always start with the teacher, work through that. And then after that, you would work with the building principal. Those are the people that you want to work with. They're the instructional leaders of the buildings. And the principals then bring concerns to me, and then we collaborate as a group, and they go back there. As always, concerns about I already just said that, I'm sorry. So I think this shift makes it clear the value that we have on in-person learning at Iroquois versus 100% remote or hybrid. But during the COVID, we still have to remember that safety is our first priority. So even though we might value something, what is our first priority? That's safety, and then we look to move from there. Any questions on any of that?
And what about COVID testing for the kindergartners and first graders, or anything differently going to be done?
No, there's nothing different for them that's being done, because the testing that we were doing was all from the Department of Health. And so therefore, they have changed that when we moved out of the orange and yellow zone. But like I said today, that if something is happening, I did reach out, and they were accommodating that we were able to implement some testing today for when there was a cluster. So I was glad they worked with us on that.
And the other comment I wanted to make is it's so important for parents to emphasize to their children to work together with the school. So many children are very, very excited to be coming back to school, that they need to be vigilant with their children to remind them that if they want to keep coming to school, which is very exciting, that they need to remind them to wear their masks and follow the rules, so we can make this happen and hopefully have a really good rapport and a good outcome.
And not only inside of school, but outside of school. And that's the big thing people have to remember. What you do outside affects what we can do inside. And I really think a lot of children understand this, follow this. And that's just where we are right now as society. And as frustrating as it gets, we have to continue to do what's safe. I am trying to, so for the people listening to my Connect Ed message, I am trying to get more creative in how I say, be safe, wear your mask, follow social distancing. But I saying it bluntly and clearly, I think is probably a nice way to do it. Any other questions? If not, I want to move on to just a couple things for recognition of students, which is I'm glad to have, actually, how we have so much remote and hybrid going on. All right, so a bunch of students are working to make Valentines for veterans. So I'm glad to see that, and that is great because, I think every time I go to the mailbox, I'm hoping I get a letter from someone, and having the Valentines go out to veterans would be great. And the other person I want to recognize is Emily Gordon. She is a senior at the high school, and what she did is she's volunteering her time. She is a Girl Scout, and I believe that's the right level. Yep, she's a Girl Scout, and she went to the Baker Memorial United Methodist Church Respite Care. So Respite Care is a free program to provide social activities and lunches for those suffering from dementia. So Emily went in there and did this, and when she got in there immediately, they needed new supplies, and so they didn't have a good way of getting the word out, so she actually did activities that brought in money. One of the things, she's a volleyball player, and one of the things they did with that is she bought a volleyball net, and the seniors at the program, not high school seniors, but seniors at this respite care, were then able to sit in chairs on each side. They lowered the net down, and they could, like with balloons, they could play volleyball going back and forth. And I've actually done that with balloons. It's a lot more fun than you may think. So I think that would be great. She bought other items like small puzzles, paints, and crafts to the program. And then she worked to offer and improve the online presence of the program. But what I really liked the most of what she did is she witnessed an interaction with someone came in and someone recognized one of the people and was able to connect with what they did back, say for their career. And so with that, she redesigned the intake form to have it for the caregivers. So the intake form has questions like that family members can fill out. So when you go talk to them, the caregivers know tracks of where to go to have conversations that would trigger memories and have conversations in the individual's history. So that was great. So congratulations to Emily. And that's all I have, Sharon. So back to you.
Right. So we'll be moving on to recognition of guests regarding any agenda items. Do we have any of those?
We do not.
We do not. We'll move on to item number 10, discussion of agenda items. 11.2 through 11.5.7.
Yeah, I would just like to make note of item 11.4.3.1, the retirement of our school district and board clerk, Cindy Sadowski. I will truly have a heavy heart in voting for this consensus agenda, but I am very happy for Cindy that she is able to retire. I know personally I will be lost without Cindy. She is one of the most professional and well-organized individuals that I know, and I can't thank her enough for all that she has done, not only for the Board of Education, but for our district as a whole, for her years of service. And I do wish Cindy the very, very best in her retirement. Luckily, we do have her for a few more months, so we'll still be able to see her face. But it is with mixed emotions that I see this on our agenda.
If I made a motion to remove that item, I'm sure I would get a quick second.
I will second that right now.
But I don't think that would be fair to Cindy, because she really enjoyed have a nice retirement. She's been a godsend to the district, and again, she's really pulled us together many times and just been there to remind us where we have to be, when we have to be there, and just is a great resource.
I know. Go ahead.
Sorry, I would like to second on that. And Cindy's really the glue that not only holds this board together, but truly holds this district together. And I'll have more to say to her about how she's not only impacted my own journey here with the district, but countless number of students with our district. And so thank you, Cindy. And I don't want to say I'm looking forward to June to share that with you, but we'll share it then.
You know,
I think those are all beautifully said. I think we all agree that how important Cindy is to us and other people that are retiring. It's always a bittersweet experience to see people retire who have such knowledge of the district and knowledge of the jobs that they do, and yet wishing them well. I find myself thinking that at every one of our retirement board meetings in June. Look at the wealth of experience that we're losing, but also how exciting for people as they're starting their next chapter. So, any other discussion of those agenda items?
I just want to make one comment. I know when I was thinking of running for the board, Cindy was always right there, gave me all the information. She made it easy. So when do the nominations have to be in for?
they're actually open right now. Some petitions have already been picked up.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. So Cindy helps to coordinate all that. She's just done a fantastic job. She's really great.
All right, moving on with the consensus agenda, as Cindy would want us to. A, 11A, is there a request to withdraw specific items from the agenda?
That would be dangerous.
I know, I can't believe I just said that.
I so bad want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Are your motives good? No. Item B, is there a request to add specific items to the agenda? And item C, is there a request for a motion to approve I would like a request, you got me all choked up now. Request a motion to approve the consensus agenda items 11.2 through 11.5.7.
So moved.
Dave.
Second.
Dave.
All those in
Dave had the
favor?
first. Aye.
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 Any noes? Okay. With that, we're moving on to our second recognition of guests.
There is still nothing.
Number 12, no, okay, on any topic. All right, with that, we are going to need to move into executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations. So I would request a motion to move into executive session.
So moved, Dave.
Second, Chuck.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And noes? Oh, I said aye too. All right, so when we come back, it will only be for the purpose of adjourning the meeting. So we're moving into executive session now.
I thought he sounded like Lucifer.
Sharon, I do have one thing to say quick, just to the board from the ski trip, just so everyone gets a compliment. When we're live. Back to you, Sharon. We got to come out of executive session.
Okay, are we live?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we returning from executive session and we are here for the purpose of calling for a motion to adjourn our meeting. I'm sorry, Doug.
That's okay. Right before you do that, I just want to let the board know I received a text message from Mrs. Muskoff that the tubing trip down to Holiday Valley, and I have some pictures, that the students had a great time. Everyone was safe, everyone's returning, and they really appreciated and wanted to thank the board for allowing them to go and have this adventure today. So thank you from the SGB and all the senior class.
All right, can we have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Second, Louise.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned at 8:38.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Nice to see everybody. Good night.